Okay, so today we're diving into what experts are now calling Phase 2 of the US-Iran crisis. And what this means is that a situation that was already pretty tense is now getting a whole lot more explosive.
And to really get a sense of just how serious this is, there's a quote coming out of the reporting that really says it all. The urgency here is very, very real. The stakes are just getting higher and higher.
So that brings us to the big question, right? What exactly is Phase 2? And maybe more importantly, how did we even get to this point? We're going to walk through how things escalated from, economic moves all the way to actual military strikes and see how this thing is blowing up.
All right, so the first chapter of the story doesn't actually begin with missiles flying. It starts with something else: money and oil. The first battlefield is economic, and the ground zero for this fight is one of the most important shipping lanes in the entire world.
Just let that number sink in for a minute. 1/5. We're talking about 20% of the entire world's oil supply. All of that energy that, keeps the global economy running, it has to pass through this one tiny, narrow strait.
And that right there is why the Strait of Hormuz is such a huge deal. It's basically the jugular vein for the world's oil supply. If you can control that strait, you've got an incredible amount of power over, well, everyone.
And that brings us to the heart of the problem. Reports are saying that Iran has actually been able to mess with the traffic going through the strait. And the US, well, it seems they're kind of caught off guard, scrambling to figure out what to do next. They've even had to ask allies like the UK and France to help out.
Well, as you can imagine, a war fought with just economic pressure wasn't going to last. It didn't take long for this whole thing to spill over into something much more dangerous: direct military action. So, what did the US do? They launched a strike on a place called Kharg Island. Now, this spot is absolutely vital for Iran's oil exports. The thinking was pretty straightforward. If you want to hurt Iran, you go after their wallet, their main source of cash.
But Iran wasn't just going to sit back and take it. No way. They hit back, and they did it by making the whole conflict bigger. Their response wasn't just in one place. They started targeting U.S. interests and bases in several different countries in the Gulf. This is where the fire really started to spread.
And this is where things get really interesting, because you can see how fast a local fight can become a global problem. Suddenly, the US is on the phone asking its European allies for help. And then you've got a giant like China, who needs all that oil from the Gulf just as much as anyone, sitting on the sidelines, watching and trying to figure out what its next move should be.
But here's the thing, this escalation wasn't just a simple case of the US flexing its muscles. That whole idea of American military dominance, well, it started running into some serious and frankly unexpected problems.
And this created two very different stories. On the one hand, you had the public message coming from the White House, which was basically mission accomplished. But what was happening behind closed doors? Well, the reporting suggests a much different reality, a frantic scramble to get a handle on a crisis that was getting bigger and messier by the minute.
And we're not talking about small hiccups here. These were major security failures. You had attacks happening way too close for comfort to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. And even more critical, some of the U.S. aerial refueling planes were taken out of action. I mean, those are the planes that let fighter jets stay in the air for long missions. Losing them is a huge blow.
So with the conventional fight hitting these snags, the conversation starts to move into much, much scarier territory. We're now talking about the highest stakes imaginable, things like the nuclear option and a whole other battle being fought online, an information war.
I mean, just listen to that. For so long, this was the one thing nobody wanted to even think about, the ultimate what if. And now, analysts are actually talking about it out loud. The second you bring Israel's nuclear weapons into the conversation, the entire game changes. The stakes are raised to a level that is honestly terrifying.
And at the exact same time, there's a second war going on. This one isn't being fought with bombs and missiles. It's being fought with stories, with rumors, with misinformation, and with censorship. It's become a war over what people believe, just as much as it is a war over land.
And this isn't some abstract idea either. We're seeing real-world examples. Stuff like fake stories about political leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu going viral, or claims that the US is actually censoring the news to hide how bad things really are. Suddenly, just trying to figure out what's true and what's not, that becomes part of the battle.
Okay, so when you put all these pieces together, what do you get? You get a very clear and very worrying picture of how things are escalating. This started as a more or less contained issue, and it spiraled into a crisis that could really drag the whole world into it.
This really breaks down the whole journey up the escalation ladder, doesn't it? You start at the bottom rung with an economic fight in the Strait of Hormuz. Then you climb to the next step, military strikes across the region. That pulls in other big countries, and before you know it, you're on a step that was once unthinkable. People are actually talking about nuclear weapons. And with every step up that ladder, the whole situation gets way more dangerous and way less predictable.
And that's where we are now, staring at this final, really unsettling question. There are no easy answers here. We're watching a crisis climb a ladder of escalation. And the honest truth is, right now, nobody knows what the next step is, or just how high this thing is going to